G'day everybody and welcome back to another DNA Reviews where we look at something other than Doctor Who. We're actually looking at Star Wars, which is a very, very cool, very, very unique, very different because it's the end of a TV series that has just polarized audiences left and right to the point like even right now, nobody's even watching us when it comes to a live broadcast except for Greg. So it just goes to show how popular that show is. But I'll tell you someone who is extremely popular, and that's my lad, Mr. Aaron. How you going, old son?
That's an understatement. I'm so popular I can't get any work done because everyone wants to talk to me in the shop all the time. But I'm going well. How are you?
We're doing very, very good, actually. So, look, it's going to be an interesting sort of discussion tonight. Normally, when we did the Andor reviews in the past, we used to analyze an episode in intricate detail. Because we're covering off an actual season, we're obviously going to truncate that and just like talk about different things. There's so much to cover off regarding this entire series. It's enough to like make your head explode. But we'll do the best we can. And of course, we are talking about season 2. So it's 12 episodes in total over a space of 4 weeks. 3 episodes per week, which was particularly cool. Naturally, there will be spoilers, including the episodes that aired last night. Okay, so for those who haven't seen them, you are going to be spoiled. We're not holding back on this one because we're just doing one discussion, so just be aware of that. Now, is there anything that you want to bring up before I mention the very next thing I'm going to discuss?
No, I think with the Doctor Who stuff, usually I lead the discussion. I'm quite happy for you to lead this one, and I'll just add in stuff as we go along.
Well, the funny thing is, and I looked this up today, and it really is a case of the circle is now complete. So in 2015, the very first impromptu trailer for Rogue One was released. The film hadn't even been like filmed yet. There was no footage at all. This particular trailer was taken at a celebration convention, and that someone illegally filmed. And it was funny because this has never actually been released anywhere, but it's 10 years later, and the whole Rogue One Andor series has now come to a complete end. And I think the timing is actually really quite fortuitous. So for those who have been following this entire like storyline, so I was a huge fan of Rogue One. A lot of people were. A lot of people did not get dialed into Andor at all when it first got announced because nobody knew who the character was. They didn't give a shit about him. Or why there was even a TV series being made about the guy. I was one of only 2 people that I knew of who said this is the series that I was looking forward to more than Mandalorian or any of the others. It was the one that I thought was going to kick a lot of goals, and it did. So with the first season that it completed a couple of years ago, it's good that they finally got around to doing season 2, even though they truncated it by 4 years. Instead of doing 1 year per season, 1 season per year, they just brought it down to effectively 4 years in the timeline. 3 episodes equals 1 year, which meant they cut a lot of corners out regarding the story, but we got there in the end.
Well, talking about the circle being complete, I think they've announced that this has been so successful, they're going to cut this or maybe the first 2 seasons into a movie and release it in the cinema next year for the 10th anniversary of Rogue One, which is really a tribute to the people who made this series, because it is really, out of all the series, I think the one that is the most cinematic in scope and with the effects and storyline. So I'm actually really looking forward to that.
You're absolutely right. And of course, we discussed this like a year ago. There may be people watching this on replay who never watched our previous reviews. The thing about Andor, of course, is that it was not catered to the general public. A lot of Star Wars fans didn't even like the idea of it because it was so adult. It was so mature and a little bit like it took you into areas that you're pretty uncomfortable with, and it broke a lot of ground, and some of it was a little bit like on the nasty side. But that's what made the story work so well. And as you said, you could not fault its production design or its style or its quality, its writing, its characters, and it just kicked goals everywhere, providing people could just deal with the concept of what they were watching. Now, of course, the first season went for 13 episodes, and it did take a while for it to get going. But once it got going, it really, really did hone in just how good quality Star Wars writing can be. So when we got to season 2, which only started only like 4 weeks ago, which is pretty amazing, everything sort of changed. The story continued on and led right up to Rogue One. And for those who have done their checking, it actually links into Rogue One really, really well. It's actually a nice little dovetail into that particular film, even though the biggest change, of course, is the fact that Bail Organa got recast from Jimmy Smits to Benjamin Bratt. So what we're going to look at just quickly, because we're just sort of going around looking at different things. and we certainly encourage people to put in their own comments. We're just going to look at all individual characters as to who they were, where they were in this particular season, even when they ended up. So as we mentioned, we are discussing the episodes that occurred last night. So if you don't want to be spoiled, look away now because they're coming up. And even Christy said cinematic filming, great costumes, boring storyline. So I disagree with you completely on that one, Christy, but everyone's entitled to their own opinion. So,
well, I think
what?
I'll just add in there, Dags and I would laugh because in the shop when we've worked together, we talk about Star Wars a lot. And when we were watching last series and this series, we had people coming in and going, oh, this had no lightsabers, in a negative way. And other people coming and going, oh, this had no lightsabers, in a positive way. So it really was polarizing as to what you said. It is one of those things. The Star Wars universe is so big that there are room for a lot of different stories in it now. And this one really did go to different areas from the regular Star Wars sort of action movies, I think.
Well, it's true. I heard people say, oh, where's Darth Vader? Where's the Emperor? Where's Grand Admiral Thrawn? It's like, mate, you've seen those guys on all the other all the other TV shows. Just for once, get off your high horse and just deal with the fact they're not in this, right? Even if a couple of them actually do get mentioned, or at least Palpatine does. So let's kick off with Bix. So she had an interesting sort of season this time around, even though she didn't do a great deal. And I thought it was she was still dealing with the PTSD after her interrogation techniques by Dr. Gorst in the previous season. And I've got to admit, this is just generally at the end of the bottom left-hand corner where she actually ties the guy up and he ends up getting killed. I actually thought that was a dream sequence because she was having obviously very, very bad dreams. And of course, she did have to go through an attempted rape in one of the first episodes. And I thought, oh, that's really cutting edge for a Star Wars series. But in the end, things worked out well for her. She ended up having a baby. And all these people are working on the assumption that the kid is going to be Poe Dameron. I don't know where that's come from. But ultimately, though, I think her storyline is probably one of the ones that worked out for the best in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I did think when she was unstable, especially in this series, that in the last batch of episodes, Luthen was going to kill her with a drug overdose when he went and visited her. So I was actually happy when they didn't, and they actually gave her a happy ending. And the thing that this does for me, it actually changes how you watch the original Rogue One movie, because the end of that, you almost feel there might be some romantic feelings between Andor and Jyn. They're not. It's just because they're dying together, and this kind of is a nice way of actually changing how you watch that movie. There was a few things that we watched the movie straight after we watched the series, and you see the original Rogue One in a totally different way because of how the characters are treated in this series too.
Well, it's interesting, of course, when Bix is leaving, and she obviously leaves Yavin 4, and it's actually Val who says to Cassian, oh, you should catch up with her or speak to her again, bloody, because he doesn't know that she's pregnant, right? And that was kind of hinted at in that sequence when she left, and a lot of people, she puts her hand on her stomach, and I was like, oh, hang on, is that a bit of a giveaway? And of course, he says, yep, when I get back, we'll have a catch up and a bit of a chat and a chinwag. And of course, that just doesn't happen. So it's one of those, when you know what the eventual outcome is going to be, it's like, damn. Yeah. So the kid's going to grow up fatherless, but at least she's at least found peace in the world. And I think having to just kill Gorst was important. As I said, I thought that was a dream sequence. I thought, oh, they've actually done it for real. And of course, the idea being that once Lonnie found out what was being planned, they were going to use the interrogation technique as a project. He tells Luthen tells Cassian and Bix, and they find a way into the center and knock him off and blow the place up. Funnily enough, when he puts the headphones on, we actually joked that he could be listening to Mariah Carey songs or something like that. That's a form of intimidation. So funny stuff. But in the end, it was good that her storyline finished up the way it did, and who knows what her future endeavors will be. Unlike Claire, of course, Claire has been a fan favorite for a lot of people throughout the entire both seasons, actually, because of the fact that she was connected with Luthen, working in the Galactic Antiquities and Objects of Interest store, just as the person in the back doing all the communication. But of course, in this season, she really ramped up and went into a higher gear with everything that was going on regarding the Rebel Alliance and all their covert activities. But how did you see Claire, old son?
I liked her last series. I really loved her in this series. And one of my favorite sequences from series 2 is where she goes into the hospital that's being controlled by the Imperial Security Bureau, is it? I think ISB.
Yep. Yep.
and manages to get in. I did think, how is this going to happen? She's going in, it's a suicide mission kind of thing. And I thought that was incredibly well directed and an important part of the story and really well played out. So I'm glad that her character was expanded. I'm glad that they expanded on the spying sort of things where they had the party and having to get the bugs out of stuff. And it really showed what is at risk for the people who have joined the Rebel Alliance, and, how treacherous their life is and what they have to navigate. So I think she was the face of the Alliance in a totally different way from all the other characters. And I think that's why she's probably one of the fan favorites.
So someone had said, because they made a mention of the fact that Luthen, he has that tube connected to him, and that's what's keeping him alive. That was like the foreshadowing of the fact that she's going to disconnect that and kill him. Because there was as someone said, if it had been another Star Wars series, she would have gone in there all guns blazing, rescued the guy, dragging him out, on his deathbed, and he would have made a full recovery. But of course, she had to go in there and kill him. Now, they showed the backstory of her and him and how he rescued her as a child, and they effectively grew up together in a father-daughter relationship. And in fact, somebody had thought, where you see the detonation of the bomb that the young Claire gets to see, that may have actually been Naboo. So a lot of people have figured that out as being possibly Naboo. But you can see why she had that connection. And of course, by the end of the story, she's lost Luthen, she's lost the store, and she's even on a planet she doesn't want to be on. She's completely broken now. And you'd be arguing, well, what's her future now? And nobody really knows. So in the end, she did well. She did what needed to be done, but she hasn't come out very good at the end of it.
Her future is finding Mayan relics on Yavin and starting up another antique shop.
Could be. Funnily enough, somebody had said, "Oh, maybe in The Empire Strikes Back, you got they got the woman who says stand by, iron control fire. That could actually be her." And I go, "Jesus, talk about drawing a long bow." But she had a fantastic arc from someone who always looked glamorous throughout her entire time. Going to all the dinner parties and working at the store. And in the end, it all just sort of fell apart. She didn't want to leave Coruscant. She had nowhere else to go. And she's now a wanted fugitive. And for a period of time, she was the wanted fugitive. But I agree with you that a whole sequence of going into the hospital, thinking, how is she going to get through this one? And doing the whole stealth thing up the stairs and whatever else. Yeah, it was, very, very, very well done. And a lot of people have really dialed into Claire. And I thought, she's been absolutely fantastic. Apparently, it's the actress's first role. So tell you what, she's going on to bigger and better things. So...
You know how there were no lightsabers in this series? There was speculation online that Luthen might have been a hidden Jedi or a Jedi at one point. I'm glad they didn't go there, but I did think it would have been pretty cool if she had got one of his relics and it was a lightsaber, and when she couldn't get through on that floor, go to the floor above and cut a hole in the wall and drop through and kill him.
That would have just ruined it. Absolutely just ruined it. It's so true. It's so true to life. That's the last thing you need, because, if you need to sneak into a real hospital, you don't have a lightsaber here, that'll just cut through the floor. Speaking of...
Just to interrupt, sorry, because we're talking about real to life. One of the things I really loved about this was Coruscant. When we first saw it big time in episode 2, it really looked like sort of, a CGI plate. Since the Empire has taken over, I really like the realistic look, the locations they use. Did you like the movie versions better, or did you like this version better? Because I found this grounded the series in a really great way.
No, I loved it here. I love seeing all the background, all the skyscrapers and all the different architecture, and even in broad daylight. A lot of times you see Coruscant in darkness, but I've always loved that city. I could just spend my whole life just looking around, what's over there and what's over there and what's over there. It's absolutely stunning. And of course, we'll show a couple of pictures later on. But even during the Empire era, they go, let's put in some water pools outside the Senate and all this sort of thing. So Claire was obviously connected to this guy, Luthen. Now, how's this for a tragic story of stories? So not only does the poor bastard spend his entire time fighting the good fight for the rebels and the Alliance, but after he's dead, even the Alliance doesn't even want to acknowledge who he was and what he had done and his sacrifice that he had made. And I thought, that is just rough. So you get to Yavin 4, and even Cassian is saying to everybody, did you guys even know who this dude was? Except for Mon Mothma, obviously. And they just don't give a shit about him. And it's like, guys, what are you doing? So, but he did what he had to do, and he was a fantastic character in this series. And it just goes to show how ruthless the guy can be, especially when he meets Lonnie in the park in the episode from yesterday, and he ends up shooting the guy. It's like, dude, that's a bit osh. What do you reckon?
Well, I think you wouldn't want to play chess against Luthen because he's probably already won before you move the first chess piece. He has to be one of the most calculating and cold good
Mm,
guys in Star Wars ever. I thought he was amazingly, um, developed over the two series. It was one of those things where people say it's boring. I think slow, character
mm.
development and plot development is good. I like that style of storytelling, and I don't think they put a step wrong. One of the things as well, when you look at Luthen and all of the characters behind the scenes in this series, it kind of makes the medal ceremony in episode or A New Hope a bit hollow, where they just go in and blow it up, and there's been years and years of people behind the scenes sacrificing themselves. And it also adds more gravitas to Mon Mothma in Return of the Jedi, where she's really, really sad and
Mm.
says, many Bothans died for this information. You actually see that, and you've got like Luke and Leia and all of that having a great time defeating the Empire. But these are the guys in the background that made it happen.
I found it interesting that, like with Luthen, he just effectively wasn't like acknowledged on Yavin and the base there. Nobody actually wanted him there. He was trapped. It's like, where can the guy go? And it was clearly he knew that his time was running out, because once Lonnie had said that there was now a team looking for Axis, which is him, he was running out of time. And as he said to Claire, that they'd run out of everything. It's a foregone conclusion. And it's like there's no thought of escape. It's like just got to make the ultimate sacrifice. And of course, you are right. In the by the time Jedi finished and like the Empire fell, and they look back upon the heroes of the Alliance, Luthen wouldn't be one of them, even though he was the guy right in the guts of it all for many, many years. And that's actually really, really tragic. So it's a sad end to a character who was like really pivotal to the establishment of the Alliance. Remembering he organised the theft of the money from Aldani, and that would have
Yeah.
helped like finance most of the base building at Dantooine and in Yavin. So yeah, very, very tragic. So between Claire and him, yeah, they're just like lost souls effectively, and it was a very sad ending for him. So yeah, because the thing about this particular series, and I think you would have noticed this as well as I did, right? When you're watching these episodes, the reason why you're a bit on edge is because Cassian lives, Mon Mothma lives, and even Melshi, of course, who we see later on end up at Rogue One. They all live. We all know that. But it's everybody else. What happens to them? It's like, as we saw in previous episodes, Brasso died, right? It's like, okay, and then we lost Cinta, and it's like, okay, who else is going to go? So there's a whole lot of unpredictability as to what's going to occur regarding everybody else. And another person who ended up carking it, of course, was Cyril. It's like, dude, what an arc this guy had.
Well, Cyril, I think, was another one of the fan favourites, and it really is one of those things where over the years you saw where he started in security and how he believed in the cause and how he was spotted by someone in the Empire as someone who could aid them and be an asset, and how he was used and then how he was used up. And that's one of the things with this whole thing. Everyone who was, gung ho for the Empire and 100%, believed in it, none of them were safe. The Emperor doesn't, appreciate any of them. He only appreciates power. And Cyril was great in a way you don't see in Star Wars a lot, because they developed his background where you've got how he develops a relationship. You've got like how he doesn't get on with his mother and things like that. And I don't think there's really any Star Wars characters where that. In broad strokes, you have, Uncle Owen and Luke have,
Mm.
friction between them that drives the story. But this is actually character building in a totally different way for Star Wars, where you get to know the person's psyche because of the way they've been worn down their mother and by the way they react to other people around them. So his storyline was particularly tragic for me because he got killed after he saw the truth. And after he saw the truth, he didn't want anything to do with the Empire or what was happening, and then he died.
Yeah, I was waiting for him to say, like he's about to say something to Cassian, and then he gets plugged in the head. It's like, oh, geez. And I agree, Greg, you have to feel a bit sorry for Cyril. You do in the end, because, since last year, there's always these discussions, like season one, who's going to turn? Who's going to start off as a bad guy, turn into a good guy? Is going to be this person, this person, this person. And Cyril would have popped up in there as well. Starts off as a complete, like, he's gung-ho, Imperial all the way. Will he eventually shift allegiances? And because of his time on Gorman, that was actually starting to happen. But of course, once he saw Cassian, it's like it just triggers a thing in his head, and he goes completely Burko. And of course, in the end, he just gets plugged in the head, and that's into that. No last words or nothing. It's just gone. It's like, oh, geez, how's that?
There was there
Yeah,
was
go
some
on.
great foreshadowing where he goes in with Deirdre to the commander, and they're like saying they're going to use him as an asset, and the commander says to him, and Cyril thinks he's talking about the alliance,
Mm.
the enthusiastic and the inexperienced, that's what'll kill them, and that was really talking about Cyril.
Yeah, it was. Just going back to Luthen, Christy mentioned in any movement you have the poster people who inspire the galaxy, but so many faceless and nameless individuals that never get acknowledged. That was definitely Luthen. And getting back to Cyril, Tracy's joined us, which is fantastic. It is sad that he was trying to do something and he then got killed. Yeah, it's a case of what could have been had he just not gone completely troppo when he saw Cassian. But of course, that was a bug that was bearing him. That was a bug that was bugging him for many years, and he just couldn't switch it off. Speaking of other characters who had a massive arc in this particular series, Paul Mon Mothma. From the earlier episodes where she's at this fantastic one-take wonder throughout the whole building on Chandrila, where if you remember, it's just this massive, what do you call it, the steady cam shot of her walking around. I was like, hey, well, they must have taken hours just to rehearse that. And of course, the whole world starts falling apart because you see her in the wedding scene and she completely loses it and starts like drinking and dancing. And where it ends up with her, she ends up having to leave the Senate, of course, get rescued by Cassian, and then ends up on Yavin 4, being one of the troops effectively. So it's sort of like going from one extreme of her life to another extreme of her life.
Well, I tell you, it must have been a thrill for the actress to go from a deleted scene in episode 2 to be called back, obviously because she looked a lot like the original.
It was episode 3, dude. Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, episode 3, because she looked like the original Mon Mothma, to being one of the backbones of this storyline. And I think she was played with complete perfection, where it is someone who's under a lot of pressure and has to deal with family, diplomacy, rebellion. And then with what you were saying about we know who dies and we know who survives, we know Mon Mothma survives. And the episode where they got her out of the Senate, even though you knew she was going to survive, was one of the tensest things I've seen ever in the Star Wars universe. It was filmed to perfection.
Yeah, I agree. And Tracy Mann mentioned Mon Mothma, absolutely stunning performance. Everybody was excellent in this. But Genevieve O'Reilly definitely stood out big time. Another story arc. Who knew this was going to happen? Good old Dedra, right? Absolutely chasing. This is after the Gorman thing. So obviously Gorman's been mined to the shithouse. The dog with a bone, chasing Axis, cuts all these corners, and look where she ends up. It's like, how tragic was that? I suppose in the end, it had to end badly for her. But still, the way it happened, and we are going to touch on this a bit further on in terms of memorable moments. But her connection with Cyril, there's a whole lot of stuff to be covered off there. So, Dedra Miro, dude, what do you reckon?
Well, in the expanded universe, she's going to have books and comics just written about her. Another fantastic character who was introduced in this series, played again to perfection. I think what's been great about Andor is there has been an absolutely stunning female cast who have all been served really well by the storylines, and it hasn't been one of those controversial things like The Acolyte or something. This has been a really great, balanced cast, and every single one of them has played it well. Deirdre, like an ice maiden who has a thing for Cyril Khan, is conflicted between her and the Empire, chooses duty in the Empire, and that eventually basically is her undoing. Her hubris of how well she thinks she is handling things and how she can do stuff all by herself. All she had to do was probably follow the Imperial rules and edicts of how her position ran, and she'd have been like one of the best players on the team. But ultimately, her own confidence in herself killed her. Well, didn't kill her, but yeah.
Well, the hard part was that after all these years, when the Empire's too busy focusing on the alliance, her thing with Access, that had already forgotten about that. That's why she said she had to scavenge for everything, bits of information. So she still had the dog with a bone, but no one else gave a shit. And I guess that's why she ended up working outside the circle of influence regarding her superiors. And of course, that had just brought her undone. But we'll touch on a bit more of that later on. And then finally, of course, you got Mr. Cassian himself. Now, this one's kind of funny. Now, the top right-hand corner there, someone said that's his Bono moment because he puts on the coloured sunglasses. I've got to admit that was kind of amusing. He had an interesting journey. I didn't think much of the first story where he had to steal the Avenger TIE fighter. I thought that was a little bit like, didn't really work for me, and where it landed on Yavin 4 of all places, with all the dudes who'd crash landed there. But it did pick up as he went along. And he's just been chucked from one like saga to another, having to rescue, get Bix sorted out, get hold of Mon, and all these other things that he had to do, and just like get his head in the game. And then, of course, after he's having a fantastic card game with K2SO and Melshi, he gets called away yet again. So you just knew that even though he wanted to get out of the Alliance and just settle down and just be a normal dude, that just was not going to happen.
Well, I think his story arc you can't really have a story arc because you already know where he has to end up in Rogue One. What I was saying about Rogue One being seen in a different way, originally I thought Rogue One was the story of Jyn Erso, but now you have this, you can actually see in Rogue One, his scenes are elevated because you know his background. So when you watch it now, there's a whole lot of background that you know that's gone on that kind of means it is more of a team effort. And although you have flashbacks for Jyn Erso, you have more of a connection with Andor because of this series. You have seen him, like from series 1 particular, flashback from when he was a boy and being sort of a mercenary with only him who he's looking after and a couple of, the people he loves, to someone who, like Han Solo's story arc, really goes beyond his original selfishness and sort of wanting to do well for himself in the universe, and realizes there's a bigger picture. And it is actually quite nice to know that even though he died, he has a child that goes on.
Yeah, exactly right. Tracy's made a comment. I'm going to get back to it. Christy said, agreed. The balance between male and female strong characters was great. It wasn't just one token strong woman. No, it was not. And then, of course, you had everybody else. All mixed bag of bunnies here. Seeing Krennic in this, he was a real hard ass in this particular series, and no wonder he's trying to get his Death Star built. Paul Cinta didn't last long. It's very funny. A few people complained online, oh my God, they've killed off the woman of color who's gay and female, not realizing that Brasso on the right-hand side also got killed off a couple of episodes prior. So it wasn't pinpointing anyone in particular. It was sort of open season for a lot of these people. But there are a lot of dead bodies in this particular screen there, dude. So Paul Lonnie in the top right-hand corner, he had it coming. As soon as he said to Luthen, "Get me out now. Here's the information. I've got to be brought out, escaped. I've got to be released." And Luthen says we can either do it fast or good, and fast meant killing him. Partagaz, of course, knocks himself off after realizing everything's just gone completely pear-shaped. Vel's still around, and Cloris on the bottom right-hand corner there. Who knows? He may have been about to change sides and actually become a good guy for Mon, but he's another one who got plugged by Cassian.
Yeah, it was one of those, apart from the people who make it into the movies, all bets were off as to who was going to live and who was going to die. And I like that. I like series that will knock off their main characters because it really does add to the viewing experience where it's not a by the numbers thing. I guess out of the people there, I really enjoyed Krennic came into it. That was enough for me. A lot of people in the shop were saying, oh, I hope the Emperor's in it, or I hope Vader's in it. But it was really the story of the Death Star, and Krennic was the one who was, it was his project up until it was taken off of him in the movie. I did wonder, when he was asking Deirdre, who else knows, if, as when she revealed, well, we got all these things that were sent to me and I've read it and all of that, I did wonder if everyone in the whole, her whole section was going to be killed because they were that into protecting the information. And that's why when we get to A New Hope, I think there's one person in the white uniform and that's it. There's no one else left.
Well, that's exactly right. And of course, we've got to mention Saul Guerrera. His usual self just doesn't trust anybody. And it's good to see he made the appearance at the end in the hologram at the conference table. He's his own beast. And because if you watch Rogue One, they say he's an extremist. And I thought that disconnect between him and Mothma's group, I think, was excellent. So it was just a nice way. Is a nice way of finishing it off, which was really, really good. And there was only one other thing that caused a bit of kerfuffle. Of course, it was the recasting of Bail Organa because Jimmy Smits was not available for filming. It's the only thing that grinds the gears between this series, Season 2, and Rogue One. Suddenly, Bail looks completely different. It worked for some people, didn't work for others. It was an unfortunate scenario. Dude, did it bother you?
No, we're all adults and we all realize they're actors and sometimes they have other commitments and stuff. So for me, it's perfectly fine. I mean, Disney do this thing which is quite weird where okay, we've got a legacy character and they've passed away, so we have to use a CGI version or we have to de-age them. I actually think, I'm fine with them, recasting. A million people have played Sherlock Holmes or something like that. Different people can play the same people in Star Wars universe. And you know what? If you don't like him, he's going back to Alderaan to get killed anyway, so it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah, exactly right. Because when he first appeared in that very brief moment, a few episodes prior, and everybody goes, "Oh, what the hell's the deal with that?" And that was the Tony Gilroy, the guy who wrote the series. His way of saying, "Okay, just be ready. Bale's going to be recast with a different dude, right? So just get ready for him. We're not going to just chuck him in your face for this big story arc. Here's a bit of a feed. We're going to drip feed him in, and we'll see how we go." And yeah, so some people it work for some, not for others. Very unfortunate, considering that Star Wars casting overall has been very consistent right across the board since the
Yeah.
70s. So that was all the characters that we saw. And they all had different sort of like stories and different arcs and different endings, some of them not so good. In fact, most of them ended badly, I think, for the most part. But of course, we're going to look at some memorable moments. Now, this is all subjective. Everybody has their own favorable, memorable moments about things that are about to pop up. And of course, what we're about to see here was what occurred on Gorman. And the funny thing about Gorman, the name of the planet, as soon as I hear Gorman, I think of aliens. You always were an asshole, Gorman. I can't get it out of my head. So, yeah, absolutely unbelievable. Here we go. Technically, that is the third Bale. There was one who filmed scenes in Phantom Menace who got cut. Oh, okay. So, okay. Didn't know that. If you get cut, that doesn't count then, dude. So, otherwise, you'd say there were two Jabba the Hutts, the original human who played him before they replaced him with a creature. This, it's like the first few episodes, I didn't think really had much going for them at all, the first three, right? But the one thing I did like was the conference room bit, right? And I thought, what a cool hangout. There's even an open fireplace, and you get to see the video, which I thought was absolutely spectacular, talking about the spiders of Gorman and how they weave all the fabric.
Yeah.
And you notice how they got around by saying, oh, Yularen and Tarkin hadn't been brought in yet, so that's why they don't have to cast those guys. So, but this was fantastic. This is where we learn, oh, yeah, they got to get this calcite. They can't synthesize it. They got to mine the shit out of Gorman. You guys in the room are the only ones who know about it. And I thought, oi, where's this going, dude?
Well, I had to laugh at the fireplace as well, because we've had a joke with Strange New Worlds that there's a fireplace in the Enterprise, and I saw that and thought, well, now Star Wars can have a fireplace in like a futuristic setting as well. I did think it was really good because where we've seen the setup and development of the rebellion, we've seen the genesis and setup of the Death Star as well, and you've seen the people behind it and what they're willing to do. And the other thing, I don't know if this would have been the same one way or the other. There was a lot of parallels between what's going on in American politics and what was going on there, right down to the propagandists and using social media and things like that. So I think for anyone who likes that kind of thing, there was a lot of it to bring out in this season, and you can discuss it till the cows come home. But it is just nice that it was firing on different levels for me as I watched it.
Yeah, I just liked in that discussion where Krennic says to everybody, you're the only ones who know. We're going to wipe all the droids' memory banks. Don't keep records. Don't keep this. Don't keep that. And of course, we'll find out later on, episodes, years later, that Dedra did actually have files on it. So, yeah, someone cocked up on that one. I like that. Yeah, 1950s inspired infomercial. I laughed when that was on. It's the spiders. Yes, they make fantastic fabrics. Yes, we wear them all over the galaxy. I mean, how else are you going to do a commercial? And they're all just watching, thinking, what are we watching this for? That was ingenious. Oh, that was so well done. Yeah, forget all the buzz and the fancy like terminology and CG shit. All the sort of just basic, simple. I'm going to admit that just really pushed my buttons. So,
Yeah.
very, very cool. Now, this one, of course, as I said, there's no particular order in this particular discussion. The whole thing with Cyril and Dedra, when he completely lost it, grabbed around the throat, and we're going to be heroes and all this sort of thing, and when the whole relationship really hit its moment, and that's, of course, when Cyril effectively leaves her. I did not see this coming, dude. And I thought, oh, what's he going to do? Considering he saved her life, in universe a few years prior. And he's just, because he's now on the side of the gore, effectively, and he gets to learn the truth. And instead of like blabbing about it, he just walks out the door.
Well, one of the good things about this, which is a little bit different from Doctor Who for me, a lot of the times I'm kind of spoilt as to what's going to go on because I hear too much and talk about it. But this was really good because I had no idea what was going to happen week to week in this series. I think there was some really good misdirection in this as well. I was saying to Dags, when Cyril was put in the holding area on the Imperial base, one of the KSO units was looking
Yes.
at him. Very weirdly, because all the others were just sitting there, and I thought maybe she has programmed that one as a protector for him. So if he does go off, it would just pick him up and bring him to safety. So I was thinking when he's in the middle of the firing line and all those Imperial droids went out, one was going to pick him up and put him under his arm and take him to safety or something. I did not see shot in the head in that scene happening.
Yeah, that's actually it's been confirmed now that droid will later become K2SO. I just like this sequence because when she says, excuse me, we're going home as heroes, it's like, okay, Dedra, you're in charge of a whole planet effectively being destroyed, yet all you're thinking about is your own career. And of course, when he gets the shits with her, even she says to him, well, you liked the promotions, didn't you? And I thought, oh, how's that? So, and of course, he's got no response to that because he has been promoted. Remember, he was used to doing the desk job on Coruscant way back when. And remember, early on in this season, where he has to show the other guy the ropes. Remember, they got the big cubicle farm, and he clicks the fingers and go, "Wait, pay attention. This is where the greatest thing, your moment of your life can occur." So he's long since progressed beyond that, all because of her. And she's right. You know, you've enjoyed all the promotions, but once the truth hits, you just go, "What? You're just going to just walk out the door?" And of course, that's exactly what he does.
The difference between her and Cyril was she knew the truth all along, and he thought the promotions were because he was doing well in finding insurgents that were not the Empire. When he finds out it's the Empire being the ones agitating, I think he rightfully feels betrayed. Because the one thing is, I feel sorry for Cyril because he, right from when he was, in Series 1, dressed as like Best Ben security unit, he was frustrated by the people around him not obeying the rules and seeing when they didn't obey the rules, stuff would go wrong. And he thought he was above that and a good person, not because he was morally good, but because he was following the rules of the society that he thought were correct. And he thought the imperial rules of, I guess, fascism, but strictly obeying them and doing everything was for the greater good. And then when he found his whole belief system was undermined because the Empire is evil and they're destroying a whole planet for its minerals and they've been planning it for a decade, I think it is going to completely, his head would have been spinning and he would walk out and that would be his reaction. So I don't know what you were thinking, but I actually thought it was a very real reaction from him for what we've seen of the character over his development.
Yeah, right. Cyril was used and abused by the system, but by the same token, he was happy to take the benefits from it as well. So, and that's what effectively what Dedra said to him. So when he got to that point, you go, well, what happens now? Does he choke it to death, or is just like, does he beat the shit out of it? Does she beat the shit out of him? Because we had no idea.
That's what happened. That's what happened in the hour when the lights went out. I think that's what
exactly right. And I'm about to bring that up because one of the greatest moments was, in fact, the dinner scene when Edie came over. And I love this whole thing, like even down to picking what clothes is she going to wear. She goes into Dedra, she's going to wear the white, she's going to wear the black, and of course their apartment. I mean, by this point we didn't know they were a couple; they were in a relationship together. So clearly things have gone a long way since the Ferrix situation, and it's such an awkward thing because when he does come home in the previous episode and she says turn the lights off, I thought, because he's only staying there for an hour, I thought, hang on, is she so disgusted by him that she doesn't even want to look at him when they're like doing the bizzo? It's such a tense thing. And of course, Edie comes over and she's spilling the sauce over the tablecloth and she's talking about Uncle Harlow. And of course, Cyril just doesn't know how to react. What a magic moment this was. It's like, hey, it's the awkward parent that nobody wants, but what do you do? What do you do? And I knew that when Dedra was saying, oh, yes, we can't put this off any longer, I knew she was going to have to meet the mother, as it were. And it was a magic moment. It really, really was. And they do have a very nice apartment, I've got to say, even though it's a bit on the sparse side.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I think the mother was pushing it to see how far she could get her way with Deirdre. The way she was eating the food and just smashing the cake. Yeah, and just being controlling and disgusting. I feel very sorry for Cyril in that part of his relationships with family and his girlfriend, where he's got stuck between two very powerful women who've basically been controlling and manipulate him for years and years and years. But I do like that his mother, who is probably more annoying, meets her match, and she basically lays out the rules and said, okay, You can see him and him, and you can have one video call a week and stuff like that. Or otherwise, we're going to bring out all the dirt on Uncle Harlow. So the one thing the mother always pulls out of her hat is used against her.
I was waiting for the old Uncle Harlow to come out, and it just got shot down in flames. And I thought, because that was the sequence where Cyril goes and lays on the bed, which apparently was like, improvised by the actor, and the director said, "That's lovely, let's leave that in." He's just completely, he can't, the poor bastard can't win. But it was interesting to see that at least they had a relationship, because when we saw, a year or two later, when Cyril ended up going to Gorman, right? And he said, "Oh, he's effectively not with Dedra anymore because he's doing the video call to his mother." I thought, "Oh, they've broken up, have they?" Not realizing that, in fact, they had still stayed together. It was just all this shifty covert stuff. Tracy said, "Dedra was a savage in this episode. Loved it." Well, yeah, exactly right. And funnily enough for Edie, right, she's been bagging the shit on Cyril for years and years and years and years. But, of course, when he dies and she's watching the TV with her friends, watching the Gorman massacre occur, she was really upset. Now, whether she knew that he was there and been killed, or knew that he might get killed, I don't know, but it was a different side to her, that's for sure. But you are right. When she's bashing the dessert in the thing, it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Now, I don't know if we're going to talk about this later, so stop me if we are. But the other thing with Dedra, she's a grey character, because there's a couple of times where she says, "I want off this project. I kind of have had enough of this," and they keep her on it as well. What did you think about that aspect of the storyline?
Well, she was just focusing on Axis. All she wanted was bloody Axis. And, of course, they give her Gorman, all right? And she says, "I don't want freaking Gorman." And even Partigo says, "Take Gorman. It's a promotion. Do it. Bloody, bloody, blah. It's all groovy." And then she realizes afterwards, yes, we're going to be heroes, until after the massacre. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe she's got her head sort of like a bit screwed up after that. But, of course, yeah, once she says, all right, Gorman's been taken care of, I can now finally get back onto the one thing that's been bugging me forever. So Cyril's always been passionate about Cassian. She's always been passionate about Luthen. And that's why I thought, just quickly, in the Gorman scene when Cyril and Cassian walk past each other and go, "Oh, what are the chances of that?" So, it's just the one thing that she's been wanting to sort out forever. So, and of course she does, but it pays a horrible price for it. But that was an awesome scene, the dinner scene. I was like, that is just magic to watch, which was very, very cool. Now, we mentioned this at the start, the wedding. My God, where everybody's lives start to fall apart, and I had to hold on this one. Tracy said, way back up here, the dance scene at the wedding with Mon Mothma, where she just cut loose, is brilliant. Her whole world's falling apart. She's down in the drinks. She's doing the big the techno music disco, which apparently is called Neamos for some stupid reason. That's actually a planet that we saw where Cassian had his beach like a flat unit thing. And of course, Tay at the top right-hand corner. We don't know what his fate is, but we see Cinta driving off with him, so it probably didn't end well. And of course, Lita got married to a dude who didn't even want to hold a hand, mate.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. Were they implying that he was maybe gay, or was it just that it was a bad match? The other thing, this music had been used in the series a couple of times before, and it always sort of I guess, signaled the time of change. But this was the biggest change in everyone's life, because everything was sort of going to shit after this.
It was. No one was happy at all, right? Lita was unhappy that the kid, right? No, I don't know. I think it was just because he was so young, and it was an arranged marriage after all. Mon is aware that good old Tay is going to get knocked off, right? Val, who turns up at the wedding, sees Cinta, right? And then Cinta just drives off with him. No one's happy. And it's like, mate, it's supposed to be a happy occasion. It's the exact opposite. It's supposed to be a happy occasion, and no one's happy. So, and yeah, when Mon...
They probably needed Adam Sandler as the wedding singer. That would have raised everyone. That would have been better. But as you were saying, for such an amazing celebration and happy moment, no one there was happy, and everyone was going forward to a worse life after that event.
Pretty much. And when you see Mon like losing her shit and just going completely nuts on the dance floor, that was so well done. And you can see, right, you're cutting loose. And sometimes people will do that on a dance floor. It's almost like you're taking drugs and you just go, I just don't care, right? I'm going to go completely crazy. You do wonder if at some time after that, she actually fell over. Because, when people push it to the length, to the absolute extreme, they eventually just collapse from exhaustion. So you don't know if that would have occurred or not, but wouldn't have surprised me. So
you do wonder also if on all the Coruscant social medias, like, TikTok, it's like Mon cuts loose and there's all these films like going up of her, because they could obviously use that as propaganda if someone there was filming.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it was an interesting sequence. And as I mentioned at the start, the whole Steadicam thing around the whole Chandrila base house thing was absolutely magnificent. So, yeah, we stayed there for a while. But, of course, Mon's bad times don't end there. And, of course, she had to get rescued out of the Senate after her speech. And even this was like, okay, we know Mon survives and Cassian survives. Well, what about everybody else? And it's like I have friends everywhere, apparently,
Yeah.
Mr. Aaron. So, and I reckon this is the first time she sees things face to face, the actual seriousness of the whole Rebel Alliance. People will get killed. People will get injured. When Cassian just shoots Cloris, the driver, right?
Yeah.
And you see Cloris in this, and he's like listening to the speech, and you're thinking, oh, is he changing his mind? Is he going to go out and go to Mon and go, yes, I'm redeemed myself? And he just gets plugged straight away. It's like, oh,
That
dude.
was that was what I really loved, because there were grey areas. I did think he was probably going to try and help her get out. I don't know. You can just speculate about that. That's one of the good things about this. People are going to be talking about this for a long time. I did think Cassian was ingenious, where he says to her, "What's his name?" Tells him his name. He's go, calls him by his name and said, "We've got her." So he's all confused, and he just plugs him. Like I said, that was great.
And you think, because you're looking at Cloris in the car thinking, oh, hang on, he's having to change of heart now. He's going to go, yep, I'm on your side now. Because remember, Mon knows his name, right? And he always cracked the shits of the fact that Perrin never remembered his name, but Mon did. So maybe he was actually going to change allegiances. Yep.
The other thing in that sequence, what I thought was great, as a member of the audience, when she's getting ready to give her presentation to the Senate, and you've got all the Imperials who can't get into the room and trying to set it down, you're going, oh, come on, get that message out, get that message out. So I was really glad. I did think, because we know from Rebels that she does get the message out, but they re-record it. I did think it was going to be cut off just as she was about to talk or something. But I am glad they did it. And what I thought was amazing, everyone in the Senate booed her.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. We've discussed this before. There's two perspectives regarding this entire series and the movies. There's what we see as the audience, which is everything, and there's the in-universe side as well. And you got to take the point of view of the in-universe characters who do see the Empire is doing great work and doing wonderful things. And like once upon a time, the Jedi were the bad guys and whatever else. So when you look at it from in-universe characters, it's like criticizing the current government, right? Saying, well, hang on, you're just hanging shit on something we like, because he may be the Emperor, for all we know, could be increasing the wealth of all the senators, right? Just to keep them in line. So, yeah, I did like the fact that she booed them. Yeah.
That good and kindly Senator Palpatine for 10 years has been pouring all his resources into the power scheme for good of the whole galaxy.
He's a cool dude. You mentioned the Rebels thing. Just want to clarify that. There's been a bit of discussions about this. So for those who didn't know, there was an episode in season 3 called Secret Cargo, which actually crisscrosses with this sequence just very, very quickly. So Mon does the big speech thing, and of course he gets rescued by Cassian. That speech, as some people have ascertained, is the same one that you do see on the Ghost, and that's the one that gets cut off. But then Draven, who's on Yavin 4, says that Mon is going to make yet another speech, which is what she does on the Ghost, which is what that shot is just there. So she effectively makes 2 speeches. But of course, in the original Coruscant one, she's wearing the blue coat, as you can see in the top, but at the bottom she's not. So okay, that's a continuity issue. But and the Empire may have doctored the speech, so it's not exactly word for word. So for those who are trying to put the nuts and bolts together, there are effectively 2 speeches for that crisscross with Rebels. And those who are interested, Erskine, who got the flick from what do you call it, from Mon Mothma's entourage, he's back. So he ended up being on the Ghost as well. So if you're wondering who that dude was, he's back in the good books. So that hopefully clarifies a bit of that.
I did also like in that there was actually a traitor amongst them who was working against them, even when she goes to the Senate to do the speech. Did you see that? Did you see that coming?
No, me neither. No. It's and of course, even Bale said, "Oh, I've got my dudes who are going to evacuate her." He doesn't know them personally, and of course, they're all shifty dudes, mate. It's like, freaking, I've got friends everywhere as far as the world's concerned. This one I did like, right? After Mon has absolutely just dropped her load and says, blah blah blah, Emperor Palpatine's an absolute prick and a half. I always thought, what would Leader and Perrin think of that? Now, Leader we don't see, right? So we've got no idea, but we do see Perrin. And he's now hanging out with Davo. I pronounce it Davo because I'm Australian. Yep. Davo's missus is drunk in his car. I was like, well, he's obviously moved on. It's like, what the hell?
Well, I did think that was a nice touch in the end. there was a montage at the end where it does show some of
Yep.
the what was happening to different characters. Most of them I thought were spot on. So I thought it was really good that we saw that.
So that would obviously tells us that, like, when Mons made the speech, parents said, "Oh, mate, she's out the door, right? I'll just replace her with somebody else." Davo's missus of all people, and Lita, we got no idea. You can almost think that Lita would say, "She's not my mother anymore." So,
well, it is one of those things. Wouldn't
yeah.
that happen? And then the Imperials go straight round and arrest the daughter and say we're torturing her unless she comes back, or there must have been fallout on Coruscant for the rest of her family and friends.
You do wonder. I don't know, unless they said, they've got nothing to report, or they just bagged the crap out of Mon and say, "Nah, she was never a good mother. She was never here. She was always away. She was always secretive. Perrin and I are really connected. We're a close family unit." And maybe they just didn't bother. I don't really know. You mentioned earlier about how Coruscant looks, just a couple of fancy pictures here, how they added all the water pools in for the Senate building. That was freaking grouse, dude. Right? And it's like, everyone was like, "No, you just want to go for a dip."
I absolutely love this. I love this version of Coruscant more than the movie versions. I prefer it when it isn't bustling. I guess we didn't see the lower levels where that is, but it looked more majestic, and I loved how they actually filmed in real locations and they fitted that into the skyline and things like that. I think it was my favorite version of the city that we've seen in Star Wars and all the different iterations over the years.
See, what I thought was interesting is this is during the Empire era, and there was always an assumption that everything just became really brutalist. Everything's just buildings and it's concrete and whatever else. Suddenly we're seeing water pools and whatever else, which I don't think appear in any of the shots post, like, from A New Hope onwards, whenever you see the like Coruscant and the Senate building. So, yeah, it's almost like someone put that as an afterthought. They said, "Okay, yes, the Empire is in town and we're a bunch of good guys. Let's just put some lakes and stuff in." I mean, on a planet that has absolutely no natural areas anywhere, yeah, it just really enhanced the look of it a lot. So I agree with you. I think it looked fantastic. So,
well,
yeah.
The one thing as well, we know the Empire, is racist, and all the aliens are taken out. There's only a few of them left. They've got rid of all the scum and villainy that were on the lower levels, I guess, and it's the seat of the Emperor, so you don't have a lot of that stuff. But the fascism was incredible. I love how Gorman's gone. So you got the senator for Gorman, and they just arrest him, and off he goes. That's the last you'll ever see of him. The whole thing where they're living in a beautiful place with, the fountains and it's all white and the different levels, you can definitely see the price they're paying for that.
Yes, it's but it does work. Did anyone else get the similarity between this and the Lord of the Rings elves? No.
Yeah, I did. Are we talking the architecture? I think when you look at Lothlorien and stuff like that, where they had very, I was actually saying to Dags in one of the shots of Coruscant, it almost looked like some of the columns came down and they like roots of trees, and then they put seats in between them and stuff like that. And I did actually think some of the design work looks like the elves cities in Lord of the Rings. So you're not the only one to spot that.
Very cool. Shane has said, "I'm wondering if Coruscant has any rain, oxygen, and clouds without any natural environment anymore." Yes, it does rain there. We see it in Revenge of the Sith, actually, when they bring Anakin Skywalker back and it's pouring rain. So, as to why they make it rain is anybody's guess, because the whole place is just one gigantic city. But yes, it does rain there as well. Very, very groovy. Just covering what you mentioned earlier, this is the scene. This is KTSO. That's actually the scene on the left where he's actually looking at Cyril. And, of course, the one on the shot on the right is actually from Rogue One. So it is actually the same droid. But I agree with you. When Cyril went into that room and all the droids just looked straight ahead except for that one, it's like, oh, that's just going to creep you right. How does it rain? That's a good question. You do see clouds. Hang on. Sorry, you do see clouds at the start of Attack of the Clones. So I don't know. Maybe just they can't control it. I don't know.
I am sure that I've read somewhere that Coruscant has weather control satellites.
Yeah. So clearly they need rain. They have clouds. It is what it is. So, another thing that popped up along the way, you get to see Dakar, which is at the top there, which is where Saw Gerrera's hanging out. And of course, 35 years later, of course, the what do they call it? The Resistance will be there in The Force Awakens. And of course, it's the same location. So we get to see Yavin 4 twice. Obviously, when they had the previous dudes land there at the start of the series, or the start of the season. And of course, later on, Saw ends up there as well, which I thought was grouse. Because when they walk outside and you get the top shot, You go, oh, it's the same place, even though they actually mentioned on screen it is the car. And I thought, how
Yeah.
grouse is that? So, yeah, that is really, really nice.
And I think Saw Gerrera's story arc was particularly good as well because it's one of those things where he becomes an absolute fundamentalist in what he believes with rebellion, and you can see the other rebel leaders see him more as irritation because he's pushing it too far and doing raids, and that plays right into the Empire's hands of how it's not a rebellion, it's terrorists and they blow things up, and he really goes down that path rather than the righteous rebellion. He's like, destroy anything anywhere where the Empire is. So there's very different levels of the rebellion at its genesis in this series.
Shane has said K2SO was brilliant in these last episodes. In the card game was very, very clever. The bit in the corridor when he holds up Hirt, I think it's pronounced Hirt, right? And he's using him as a shield as the security guys is pumping all these laser bullets. That was a bit real. That was a bit rich, wasn't it? It's like, oh, I'll just pick up this body. It can take all the hits, and it's just a corpse that's just getting pummeled. And I go, freaking hell, man. And then he said he cracks the joke at the end of clear the pathway. It's like, bloody hell.
Well, the best thing about that, the Imperials say to him, okay, sir, you just step out of the way here and we'll take care of this. And he gets pulled out and uses the human shield. So I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, that was really brutal. I mean, if you could look at in the entire Star Wars universe and look at the franchise and go, what were scenes that were like, oh, that was really pushing the edge, and obviously Bix's like the rape sequence and the interrogation and all that sort of stuff. But having a dude hung up by a droid while it's getting pummeled by laser blasts, you go, yeah. I tell you what, Tracy's mate, what's with the pronunciation of Yavin? Yeah, it's very funny. I think it depends if you're English or American. Some people say Yavin, some people say Yavin. But as we found, even in Star Wars, Leia or Leia, depending on who you talk to. I mean, C-3PO says Leia, and he's a protocol droid, so you think he's got it right. But even she says Leia, so
yeah.
Who knows?
And Tarkin says Leia, and he's a respected English actor. So
exactly
who knows?
Right. Chrissy said about he was dead. It wasn't going to hurt. No, that's a good way of looking at it. Yes, exactly right.
It wasn't going to hurt, but it did leave a mark.
It did leave a mark indeed. The corridor scene makes up all the kids' Star Wars stuff out there right now. Yes, it was a bit on the nasty side. But now this part, I absolutely love. I did put this in as a memorable moment. It just absolutely cracked me up, right? I've had to put the quote in. It's when Edie gets the spider from Cyril, right? And she says, I'm going to quote this, perhaps I'll call it Cyril. What a comfort that will be. The silence, the brooding, be almost like having you here. Oh, dude, how's that smack down? What's the deal, dude?
I think she would have, and the whole team would have loved filming those scenes because she's one of those people everybody knows who turns anything into an insult or a put down and things like that. So that was particularly funny when he comes back. I do think though, it wasn't a great gift. You don't buy a spider for your mum, do you? I think it was a two-way thing where he's giving her a gift he knows is not going to be appreciated, and so she says something about it that is a dig back at him.
See, I now say that whenever you see a spider in your house, regardless if it's a daddy long legs or whatever, it's got to be called Cyril, right? I tried that a joke in the store with you, and the Star Wars people hadn't watched Andor and they hadn't seen that episode, so they didn't get the joke. That to me is fantastic.
Here's a meme for you. A woman in Australia pointing at the roof at a giant huntsman and just going, Khan!
Oh, dear. But I thought it was fantastic. And, of course, the thing is, you don't know. At the end, when it's all said and done, right, and Edie does get told that Cyril's dead, I mean, we see her crying when the massacres are occurring. But will in the end she just go, oh, well, he was just a pain in the ass anyway? Or does she really have feelings for him? You'd think from everything we've seen in this season and the previous season, no, right? But maybe she'll be looking at the spider going, yeah, I kind of didn't treat him as well as I should have. We'll never know, but I don't know. So,
well, yeah. I did think it was nice they gave her the coda at the end where she's watching the TV on the Gorman massacre and crying with all her friends around her kind of thing.
And as always, it was just a small 4x3 TV screen, not these big, wide LED bloody things that we all have these days. So they kept it within the Star Wars universe, which looked really, really good. Yeah. What was the thing about collecting their dead spiders? Well, you did see a spider actually spinning the weaving thing. I mean, the idea was, I think hang on, start again. I don't know if there was actually the spider that actually creates the webbing or a replica of the spider. So in other words, it's like Statue of Liberty, right? There's only one of those, but they make replicas of it instead of giving away
Well,
physically dead spiders. So I don't know.
the thing was, he had many of them to spare because he was getting the secret messages in the spider, so he probably just brought one home.
Well, see, I interpret it as saying they're a replica of an actual spider, not an actual one that died, and they're giving them away
Yeah.
as gifts. But that's a bit dumb, because then you'd have all
Well, the
these quarantine
spiders were a
issues and
lot.
whatever.
No,
No.
they were, I think, toys, because the spiders were a lot bigger than that.
Yeah, I think you're right. So yeah, they were just mock-ups of the spider. But I love. Someone said, I think it was you, and I might have to try to see if I can say it. They had 6 legs instead of 8. Hang on, I'll have a look. Maybe you're right. Is that 6-legged? It's a 6-legged arachnophobe. So it's not it's an insect now instead of an arachnid. Is that right?
I tell you what, if one of them turns out up in my house, I don't care how many legs it's got.
Cyril, I'm going to give you the Dedra treatment, right? I'm going to turn the lights off and just smack the shit out of you. So, this was a cool sequence that occurred, and once again, we did not know how this was going to play out, right? We get told that Davo, he's got what do you call it, counterfeit items in his collection, right? And there's a big party that night, and every man in his woofer turns up. And I did like the fact that the Imperials were present, even though they're wearing the nice jackets and the new belts and whatever else. They get to see the collection. Krennic is there. Krennic, of course, meets Mothma. Luthen is there. It's like, mate, Tension City. But, of course, Claire has to get the microphone out of the disc at the bottom. The thing about this scene that I could not fathom is that, as you can see over there, she's bleeding. And I was almost convinced she was going to drip blood on the floor and somebody would notice it. But they just sort of edit their way around it. So she fixes the problem. You see her hand under the cloak, and that's the end of that. So I don't know what you thought at the time. And I like the fact that she engaged Lonnie, sucked him in to say, well, you're one of us now, so you got to kind of help out. I thought that was actually a really, really good sequence because you did not know how this was going to play out, because I thought, mate, anybody could be discovered right here.
What I thought was going to play out was both of them explain to Krennic how, blindness is considered, a blessing in some cultures, and you have to touch the thing. And I thought he was going to touch it, and when his hand came up, there was going to be blood on it, and that would have given it away. But they got through it. It was another one of those really well filmed and really well thought out sequences that this show was like littered with.
Yeah, that was the only thing though. I thought because we didn't know. It's like, okay, is this going to like change the perspective of the story? Suddenly, Claire's a spy with quarters. She's trying to get the microphone out. And Lonnie, oh, you're in trouble now. But they just sort of cut away from it. And I thought if there was a weak moment of that sequence, that was it. Because I was looking at like, and Claire had her hand under the cloak, and you go, well, hang on, she's still bleeding, or she got her hand clasped, or what's going on? Sorry, dude, go for it.
Do you know what would have been very funny or cool in that scene? If Krennic went up to Luthen and said, Harlow, I haven't seen you in years.
Everybody was trying to assume, ascertain who was Uncle Harlow. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny if it was someone in power? And yeah, you're right. It was actually Krennic or someone like that. I thought it was interesting. So they had a safe house, right? Because when we first see the Bix and Cassian in this apartment, now, by and large, people who live above ground in Coruscant, it's effectively the luxury part of the universe because all the poor people live underground. But I like the idea that it was actually a safe house that they've had for a very long time. So much so they've actually put radios and shit inside the walls. And I thought it worked really, really well because I thought, hang on, where are they? How did they get a place here? And of course, Luthen says, yeah, it's a safe house, and it gets used a fair bit over the years, as we see. And I like the idea that they had to use the binoculars to look at the flashing light to say Luthen is signaling them. But that is a fantastic image, even though the apartment building itself, as we see later, is sort of a bit decrepit and decayed. But there are people living in it. And I thought the funny thing was, I was convinced that when Claire's bashing in the wall to get the radio out, I was thinking of the movie The Substance, and I thought, the neighbour's going to go knock on the door going, hey, what are you doing in there, man? Because there was a lot of noise, and she's bashing and bashing and bashing. But clearly no one gives a shit, so... But yeah, very, very cool.
Yeah, I think that was partially deserted, that place as well. I'm not sure, but it obviously hadn't been lived in for a long time. It was in one of the seedier areas of the city, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, a dude comes out of an apartment, so it's not like it was completely empty. But who knows? Maybe they bought the apartments around it just to keep it isolated. But the fact that they had a safe house like that above ground, I thought, okay, and that may have been bought with the money from Aldani. You just don't know, the heist. You don't know how that played out. So clearly, the biggest thing that occurred in the entire series, right? Now, I must admit, when I watched this episode, I had headphones on, I had the sound turned up, and even I was getting the heebie-jeebies because I thought, where is this going, right? It was the Gorman massacre. right? To me, this was the best episode of any Star Wars series ever produced. It was just absolutely on edge. You did not know what was going to happen. The moment the sniper takes out the Imperial dude and everybody starts rioting and there's guns going off everywhere and everybody's getting killed, civilians are getting knocked off everywhere, stormtroopers are getting killed. You have no idea how this is going to play out at all. I don't know what you thought, but I was thinking anyone who did not think this was the best episode they've ever seen of Star Wars TV needs their head read. It was magnificent for all the wrong reasons, effectively.
No, I totally agree with you. I understand why they wanted to get all of this series out for the Emmy season in America. And this is the only thing that disappointed me about this was it made it that the last group of episodes couldn't be as good as this, because this was absolutely stunning. But I was like thinking, oh, it's going to be a group within the resistance that started. They have the guy hanging on the wall with the flag and stuff like that. And then when you see the Imperial sniper and he takes out one of the Imperials, you're like, they are totally despicable. And it's emotional on different levels, because you see the elder, I can't remember his name, who
No.
doesn't want to go ahead with it because he realizes what's happening. And, it's almost like he's pushing too hard against the river now and he can't stop it. And he sees them all go into a shooting alley where there's no way out. He sees them sort of surrounded by stormtroopers. And, in that situation, probably if the Imperials hadn't had a sniper there, something would have happened anyway.
Yeah, they needed a catalyst to start it off. And of course, they intentionally put these young green guys out there who had no idea, completely out of their depth. They were all expendable. And the fact that it was all set up, and of course, Dedrick didn't know what was going to happen until after the other guy, the guy in control, had it all worked out. Yep, we'll kill one of our own. That's the powder keg, and that's how things will go. And of course, after all that, the KX droids come out and just start throwing people everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like friggin' hell. And of course, the gore, which is like the partisans, they're all getting killed left, right, and center. And you go, and people would just go nuts, wouldn't know where to go, what to do. And it was just a massively magnificent element of television that even Greg has said, because you did not know. And that was the thing. You did not know what was going to happen. Is Cassian going to kill Dedra? No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to Cyril? He gets killed. The partisans, they all get killed. There are bodies everywhere, right? All you know is Cassian will escape. Everything else, you got no idea. And I thought, in terms of TV, I got to the end of that, and I said it took me a while. I had to really settle down and go, you know what? I need to absorb that. That was hard work because it was so intense.
The other thing that is great is that all through it, you've had the tension of they're going to mine Gorman. And this was they're like Cyril saying the ships are landing all over the planet. And what I thought was really good, they didn't show you, because in your imagination, it's 100 times worse of anything they could film. So when Cyril is so shocked because he's been worked into this situation where it's going to basically be global genocide because of what he's been helping engineer. I'm glad they didn't go there and show it. And it's kind of like what we hear from the Senate, because they never saw what happens. They think it was the Gorman uprising, not the Gorman massacre kind of thing. So I thought this series was really good in what it didn't show as well as what it did.
See, that you're right, because when you had the news reports, they're all saying that the Imperials are the heroes, and you're right, the Gormans have all revolted, and it just caused all these issues, and it's the insurgency and whatever else. And that's just the media doing what the media does, and which relates to the real world in a lot of ways. And it paints the Gore as being the bad guys and the Imperials being the good guys.
And the one thing that you had was the one radio station that was telling the truth, and they broadcast until they were basically destroyed.
Yeah. So it was kind of thing from a writing perspective, and you go, okay, how do we set this up? How do we get everybody in there? How do we set it off? And then have justification for killing everyone, right? Now, luckily, there were no kids there. Even these days in protests, people bring children to protest. At least in this, it was just all adults. And it was just a complete free-for-all, and everybody's just getting knocked off. But in terms of like intense TV, and I agree with you, it's like, oh, how are they going to top this because the following night was how Mon ended up getting out of the Senate. But I thought that is going to be a tough one to top because you just did not know where it was going to end and who was going to be impacted by it all. So,
well, the thing is, they could have had some bigger story beats if Rogue One wasn't there, but because Rogue One basically showed the discovery of the Death Star and it being tested for the first time, you couldn't have it as the final episode of
No.
Andor, which was why I watched the movie straight after, because that really is the end of the Andor series. They just filmed it 10 years ago, kind of thing. But it does dovetail incredibly well into Rogue One.
It does indeed. And I did like the fact that after Cyril and Cassian had their fight, Cassian says to him, "Who are you?" And I thought, of course, he wouldn't have a damn clue who Cyril is. So, and Cyril's just another victim amongst all the victims. So, and of course, Dedra, she has a complete meltdown at the end of it. It's like, oh my God, what the friggin' hell have we done? But, she's got the shaking hand, right? She's trying to pull the neck out of she's trying to breathe properly. But at the end, puts the jacket down, does the Picard maneuver effectively, and back to business we go. So, freaking hell. It is an episode that I think will be talked about for a very, very long time, because it was like, that is just something you have never seen in any Star Wars TV show ever, and never will, where they're prepared to sacrifice people left, right, and center. It's not just the good guys killing all the bad guys. It is everybody getting knocked off. So,
and you felt sorry for the Imperial garrison that were there, where he's like, out they go, and he's like, but they're all green men. Like, they're all new. Like, it's just going to make things worse. He didn't know they were doing it to deliberately agitate people.
And I also like the fact that you had the guy in the hotel, right? The dude who's not the butler, what do you call it, the ballet dude.
Concierge.
And he's the one who's concierge, and he's the one who says rebellions are built on hope. And I thought, oh, magnificent, absolutely magnificent. So, that was just fantastic. Shane has said, I wish we got to see Tarkin in the last scenes with Krennic. No, because they'd have to do digitized version. Everybody go, oh my God, it's a digitized version of Tarkin. No, just get rid of him altogether, not put him in there. Vader and Palpatine ready. No. The moment you do that, you lose all focus of the show. You put in Vader, the Emperor, whatever, people just want to care about that, right? It's just a massive distraction. You don't need the distraction. Do the name drop of Palpatine, leave it at that. And Tarkin as well. The moment you put him on screen, that's all people are going to care about, right? So this is what your wish is. Your wish is not going to be granted, and I really love that, because that's just catering for fan service. So sorry.
What might have been cool is in the previous week after Mon Mothma, if you had the Emperor address the Senate, and he's not the all crippled guy that we think, because they're using a nicer version of him for sort of social media purposes, and then you have another layer of Imperial deception and explaining why not everyone sees him as this crippled old wizard who is controlling the Empire, kind of thing.
Yep. So, like Shane, it's the same thing for reason we're not having lightsabers and Force users and everything that had a Force healer. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it. It's got to fit the story, and it's survived quite well without it. Another tense scene, right? So the wheels are falling off Dedra's wagon, and she gets to meet Krennic. Wasn't he a prick in this? Freaking hell. And of course, he walks in, and if you look at the framing, you see just the bottom of his face. And I thought, that's an unusual framing choice. I see her like in full view, but you just see the bottom of his face. And of course, he's cracked the biggest shits, because she did have files connected to the Death Star, right? And she knew what was going on, and all she cared about was Axis. But of course, he doesn't care about Axis, right? And what happens to her mirrors exactly what happened to Cyril in season 1. Right? Trying to do the right thing, do the duty, gets caught, stuck in incarceration, and gets interrogated. And of course, in that instance, Dedra was the one interrogating Cyril. So talk about the wheels going completely full circle. But this was a magnificent moment, and you knew her goose was cooked once she admitted that, she had these files for a couple of years, should have told people, didn't tell anybody. I know shit. Yeah, it was like all over Red Rover after that. What do you reckon?
Well, there's a lot of different things you think about when you hear that, because if she had the files for 10 years, she wasn't just following along with the Imperial's power, the Emperor's power program. She knew they were building a Death Star, and she knew it was going to be a weapon that could destroy planets, kind of thing. So she's more evil than you actually realize. But because she's focused on Axis, that's probably just a side thing for her. But she did actually give them the information they wanted. She worked out that Claire would be the person that they should go after. And what about, when they go, okay, she got out of the hospital, she's got a plague, we're telling everyone like COVID's happened, report her straight away. I thought that was brilliant as well. I thought that was really well done.
So the funny thing is, so here it turns up, and she says, get this. He says, give me the information. We'll have a quick victory, and you'll be seen as a hero. And of course, what happened to here? He just ended up being freaking body bag for freaking laser bolts at the hands of K2SO. And the thing was, and the thing we didn't see, and this was a little bit weird, right? So she had this information for a couple of years, and Lonnie had somehow stolen her card pass thing. And of course, we didn't see that. So that was a bit of a like, okay, that was something we probably needed to see somewhere where he goes, oh, she's just left it on the bench. I'll just swipe that or make a copy of it. It's all good. And of course, this is Lonnie, was looking to find information on the task force to track down Axis, because he's obviously connected to Axis, which is Luthen. And of course, he finds all the shit about the Death Star. He spends 3 hours there looking through it all. And then, of course, Krennic's realised what's happened. New words out. So in the end, you can argue that her having this information on her computer in the first place, it gets to Lonnie. From Lonnie, it goes to Luthen. From Luthen, it goes to Claire. From Claire, it goes to Cassian. From Cassian to the Rebellion. So she's the one who brought it all undone in the end anyway. So she's the one responsible when you sit and think about it. So, dude. But yeah, clearly, I mean, she was interested, as I said earlier, she was interested in getting Luthen. No one else gives a shit about him now. The whole Star part thing is gone. We've moved on to bigger fish now. But of course, she couldn't let it go, as you said earlier. And yeah, Shana said, as the plague excuse keeps the troopers occupied. That's exactly right. And that was part of Gaz. It was a good idea at the time, but it all just fell in a heap. It was like, but what a ruthless sequence. And when you see Dedra in the cell later, her rank has been removed, the belt's been removed, where she's ending up. Narkina 5, here we come. So
yeah,
unbelievable.
Well, that was a great ending where I'm like, is she in that prison? And then the floors go off. I'm like, oh yep, she's there. She's not getting out.
Yeah, she's juicy fruited for sure. But prior to that, of course, she did have to meet Luthen. Okay, now because he's in the back trying to destroy the radios, gets interrupted, knocks on the door, and she walks in. Right, and of course, at this point, you don't really know. Now, had the season been longer, you wouldn't have known what was going to happen. But I guess it was kind of telegraphed that she was going to arrest him. But he cracks the line talking about the antiquities. There are currently only 2 items in here of questionable provenance, and of course, that's him and Clay.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I thought that was really clever.
Yeah, and of course she thinks, mate, she's going to be the hero. She's like dodged all these the proper processes to get Axis or Luthen arrested, and of course it is just going to backfire on her badly, and she will get the glory. I finally caught this dude, and no one cares, as I mentioned a moment ago. But the fact that she didn't follow the correct process is what's going to bring her undone big time. But this was a fantastic sequence because you really didn't know what was going to occur. And of course, Luthen realizes he's got to kill himself to try and get away from it all.
I did think maybe her hubris was she thought she was better than she was, but I did think it was a bit silly of her just to turn up by herself. And when he's walking around with a stone knife, I was thinking, this is not good. I did wonder if he was going to try and stab her. But when she sees out the back and the acid's burning away everything, she's like, what have you done? And he's all hunched over. I thought, like, yeah, that is a hard thing to do, destroy all the evidence and then kill yourself. But it leaves her completely screwed.
See, she would definitely go on her own just to have that moment, right? Okay, I need my one-on-one with this dude. I finally worked out, and she does explain it in the cell how she found out this dude was connected to that dude selling antiquities and all this sort of. She joins the dots, right? She would need her moment. Okay, it's almost like every detective story ever, right? Where the detective walks in and then the police come in afterwards. Hang on. Yeah. So she needed that moment. Now, the thing with the knife is that, of course, he at this point doesn't necessarily know whether she's onto him or not until the star part comes out. And some other people have also said, why didn't he try and kill her? But, of course, she's not the threat. He's the threat because he has all the information. So in the end, what do I do? I've got to kill myself. The jig is up. It's essentially like that. If he kills her and he gets stunned, doesn't fix anything. So he's got to try and knock himself off. Go for it, dude.
Well, the other thing, her motivations and, how off whack it is, explained where she actually brags to him, I've dreamt about this 1,000 times and how this would happen. So it is become an obsession with her beyond obeying Imperial rule. But I do still think she could have gone in by herself and then there's a couple of squadrons of stormtroopers standing outside or something like that.
Nah, I like the idea. You didn't know because you're thinking, because at that point you don't know if she's just going to walk in. I've always wanted to come here and then just walks out again. You don't know.
Do you know what might have been very cool? If she'd gone there presuming that Claire was Axis and not actually putting it together, and then I don't know, when she's there, he gives himself away because he thinks she's come for him or something. That could have been another layer. I mean, it was great anyway, but that would have been interesting if she'd put together, oh, there's all these antiques and Claire's the one who put them all in or something, you know.
Because in the end, it's only when she sees the smoking of the radio in the background, it really nails it in. But even the other guys say, "How do you know? What's your evidence? How certain are you?" She's certain, but no one else is certain. So it's not like it's a completely cut and dry case. So funnily enough, had he just played dumb, right, and not had the smoking radio at the back, he may have gotten away with it. You never know. So yeah.
Well, I tell you what, when you see the Imperials just slaughtering townsfolk in what looked like Naboo, they don't need any certainty for anything, do they?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So Shane has said about watching episode 11, 12 and Rogue One, Star Wars for the next trilogy marathon to watch. Yeah, exactly right. As we said, episode 12 and Rogue One dovetail in quite nicely. Tracy said Dedra and Cyril and their lives were so much alike and toxic, and their ending up together was well done. Yeah, well, at the time, we weren't sure if they were in a relationship. Remember when he comes home from, I think it's Gorman, and they just kiss each other on the cheek, and it's just tension everywhere, and he's only staying for an hour, and that's when she says, turn the lights off. It's like, all right, okay, like how awkward is this? Maybe she doesn't want to see, she's going through the motions, but obviously later on, she did actually have some affection for him, so who knew? Maybe he just grew on her. You never know. Very good. Just sticking with the Dedra and Cyril wanted so badly to shine in their profession, but they just weren't up to it. Yes. And of course, with Cyril, his redemption could have occurred had he not got killed. And of course, with Dedra, it was only going to be one way, no matter what. Yeah. And as Chrissy said, it was like an onion layer after layer. And of course, with Dedra, she brought it herself undone by having all this information and not reporting it because, you know, had she just said, look, I got this information from Scarif, I shouldn't have it, bloody blah. But she'd kept it. Lonnie found it, and it was all over at Red Rover. Another key thing was the sequence on the Rebel base. I like this. This is also from Rogue One as well, where they've learned this information. It's just been drip-fed this information, right? Okay, Scarif, super weapon, Jeddah, Kyber crystals, and I think there's one other thing, and that's it, right? Oh, and you know that's all they know. And of course, there's a lot of skepticism in the room as to what this thing happens to be. So a lot of people have cracked the shits over this thing. And hang on, how can they be so dumb as to not know what's going on? But once again, if you look at it from an in-universe perspective, that's all they've got to go on. So it could all be a massive trap because, as we've seen with Gorman, right, the Imperials are good at setting up traps, really complicated ones. So no wonder they're not acting on it. And of course, in Rogue One, until they get Jyn Erso there and they find out about Galen, do they go, yeah, all right, we've now confirmed that there's a big thing going on. So it makes sense that with this information that they got from Claire, which has been passed through Cassian, they're going to be skeptical about it because that's all they have. So people need to remember that when they watch these particular scenes.
Yeah, I think even in Rogue One, Cassian comes back and goes, well, the weapon is confirmed, and they still don't believe him, and they still don't want to back behind him. I did think what was really nice, even some of the less important characters that were in Rogue One, they got the same actors and actresses back to portray them, and that was impressive. And they looked pretty much the same as 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was, and it worked really well. And of course, the whole look of the base looked exactly like we see in Rogue One. So they've replicated it beautifully. And it's good to have Draven back. And yeah, I got to admit that was really well done because they're not going to just go, yep, we're off and running because, well, you can't because in the movie, you don't react to it until later on. So it was absolutely really, really good. This I did like. This is when Vel is with Cassian and they're rejoicing the heroes no one will ever remember. Because even I was thinking when the episode was playing out and we're getting towards the end, I thought, what about all the dudes who came before what we have now and made all these massive sacrifices for the greater good, and nobody even knows who they are. And they go through the whole lot of them from the Aldani thing through what happened on Gorman and whatever else. And I thought that was a really, really nice moment because in the end, and I think we mentioned it earlier, unless you're the poster people, you'll just get forgotten in the midst of time. And I thought that was a really, really nice moment. It wrapped the series up quite nicely.
Yeah, I thought that was good too. And it's one of those things where, as we were saying earlier, you know, all the people who didn't get the medal at Yavin are these people who have been honoured in this series. So we've got to see probably the most, you know, the best way we're ever going to see the rebellion set up. There's probably never going to be another series like this again. So it was very impressive. the episode, I kind of do agree with Shane. Not that there should have been Vader and Palpatine and everyone in the episode, but it would have been nice if there had been the finale had matched the Gorman Massacre episode, because I think once you hit that peak this week, if that was a 10 out of 10 episode, this week had, 7 or 8 out of 10 episodes. So it would have been nice if the finale had done something. But like I said, because you've got Rogue One, all of the big action plot beats have already been tied into that movie, so you can only dovetail into it. So probably for anyone who hasn't watched it, if you're looking at these reviews, I would watch all of Andor and watch Rogue One as the finale for the Andor series, and it makes it a lot better rather than having a drink and having a toast for the fallen comrades kind of thing.
Yeah, I know a few people have actually done that, and they've said it makes the series a lot more poignant, which is really cool. Just 2 pictures left, actually. I like this one with Partagaz listening to Nemec's manifesto. Who knew that it would the ears it would eventually grace? Now, I don't know about you, but I didn't realize he was going to knock himself off. But everything's fallen apart. He let people away. Like Claire escaped, and the rebellion's taken over, and Leggett is the only one outside now. And it was like, okay, and there you go. What a way to finish his arc.
Yeah, that was another one of those where we didn't know what would happen because he's not in the movie universe after this. But probably thinking about it, it is like a lot of what the Nazis did. They would commit suicide when they failed and things like that, because it's probably worse going to prison or surviving, a failure to the Emperor.
Yeah, and it was a big one too. So, but yeah, the fact that he's listening to the manifesto, and it was good to see it finally reappear from season 1, because we were discussing Nemec in part of the tributes, and of course they're listening to the manifesto, and the quotations are actually really, really poignant. So that was actually quite nice. But I thought, okay, and yeah, when Leggett is outside, he's like, okay, what's Partagaz going to do? And he offs himself. He's like, okay, and he was waiting for it. He was outside just waiting for it to happen. Can I just collect my thoughts? And that was it. So I felt that they should have showed us a bit with the rebels working out that they needed to find Jyn. Now, that doesn't come until Rogue One. I mean, they can't, because until they've actually realised who Galen Erso is, and then he's got a daughter and is Jyn, that actually occurs in the movie. So they can't do it here. So, and that's the key thing. So
the crazy thing that they don't need Jyn, they need Saw Gerrera, because he sent Bodhi with the Death Star information to him, and they only get Jyn as sort of a secondary thing because they've fallen out with him. They're like, okay, get his daughter because she has a relationship with him, and she isn't the catalyst up into the point where they go there and the Death Star turns up. I mean, at that point, she could have walked away from the story, and it was only because her father was still alive that she even stayed with the rebels. So I did think it was good. I thought maybe they might have had a scene of her in the prison, maybe, but not the rebels knowing about her yet, because it didn't come into the story till that point.
No, exactly right. So, and then that's when Melshi and K2SO have to go to Albany to pick her up. But if you had a shot of Jyn in prison, you go, what was the point of that? So, it is what it is. She hasn't arrived just like Chirrut, Imwe and Baze Malbus, all those guys, they just haven't arrived yet. Their time doesn't come until the movie. And just to finish off, a couple of things. They made a point of saying the guy on the Merrick, when Andor was coming back on the ship, and they said, Merrick would have shot them down, just so you know who Merrick is, because they were talking about Dodonna as well. We all know Jan Dodonna, but Merrick was the guy from Rogue One. He would have just shot them down. In the middle, you got the mortar stones. You see a brief glimpse of them at the top there from the Luthen store, even though that's a slightly different variation to the ones that you see from the Clone Wars and Rebels and whatever else, which are on the bottom. It's kind of close, kind of exact, but kind of not. And the dude on the right, new security guard guys, got their hats. They're wearing like effectively snowtrooper armor with a bit of mixture of Bike Scout armor. And it's like, who are those dudes? And I thought, that's actually a bit of a mishmash of like Imperial uniforms and stormtroopers. What do you reckon, dude?
Well, all the cosplayers will be going, well, I've got 3 out of 4 of those uniforms that I can get a new... Moneybags will be able to do that one straight away with just stuff out of his wardrobe. I did notice that where I'm like, okay, it's the plastoid armor without like the helmet kind of thing. I guess it's security armor.
Yeah, but it really will actually work now. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. So, very, very cool. That's actually the end of my pictures. They're the bits that I thought were memorable. Now I don't know what other people think. As I said, I thought the first couple of episodes was sort of like struggled a bit, but once we got to Gorman and whatever else, then it really sort of did pick up. So, is there anything else that I haven't covered off that you want to mention, old son?
No, I think we've gone over everything and talked about all the main points. I thought we haven't talked. The music was good. We've talked about the production design. I thought was pretty much faultless. There was no special effects that I thought were dodgy, and I don't think there was, apart from maybe as you mentioned, the whole on Yavin in the first 3 episodes and the rock paper scissors and all of that
Yeah,
kind of. I felt that was maybe not needed in it, but I
no,
thought it was a fantastic series. The only thing I always wish in these things that they introduce all different characters. I'd have loved to seen Porkins on the base and like he's just pulled off some massive maneuver, and then he go because in Rogue One we saw Red Five die, the
mm,
pilot before
mm.
Luke took it. I always thought it'd be really great if Porkins had pulled off some maneuver at Scarif, so he was a bit of a ace pilot, and it gives some backstory to him. But I can see Dags doesn't think that's warranted.
No. One thing they didn't cover off is Cassian's sister. That never got resolved, even though you see her in one of the dreams. Some people thought, oh, maybe she grew up to be Claire, joining dots that can't be joined, but that never got like sorted out. So, unfortunately, who knows? In a longer season, they may have tackled it, but they didn't. So we'll never really know. Somebody also mentioned that Luthen trying to commit suicide echoes his statement from season 1. And we talk about the ultimate sacrifice. He sacrificed everything. Well, he's got to sacrifice his life. So I thought that was a nice little connection there as well. And he actually says there's a lot of stuff going on, so he knew the walls were closing in on him,
Yeah.
and it wasn't going to be too long before they get caught out. And it's a shame too, because in the end, all he had to do was just stick it out survive for maybe a couple more months, and he would have seen the whole thing change completely with the Alliance having their first victory against the evil Galactic Empire, dude. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And then, yeah, but I can't really say that I'm disappointed about anything from this. Was there anything that you didn't enjoy or didn't like?
Only the first couple of episodes, as we covered off the Yavin 4 thing. It was good they were on Yavin 4, but the rest of it was kind of dumb, and they're stealing the Avenger. That never went anywhere. But after that, from Gorman onwards, it was great. And I thought the Claire backstory as a young girl was too long. I thought that was great, but it was just give us something else. So yeah. Now we haven't done this for a very long time, and I think Christy's still watching us with a bit of luck. So Christy, if you want to give us your crimson yawns for the entire series, now keeping in mind. Remember, the worse yawns, the better it was. Hang on, I've got to remember how it works now. The least yawns, the better it was. The more yawns, the worse it was. Now, I know Christy's not necessarily a fan of Andor. At least you got through it, hopefully. So, Christy, do you want to give me some yawns as to what you thought of the series? For myself, while I'm waiting for Christy to come through, I thought it was very thought provoking, very, very ingenious. I don't expect them to make another series like this. It cost them an absolute fortune to make it, and you can see why. It's all on the screen,
Yep.
and it looks spectacular. Magnificent cinematography, and one of those things where all the details have just been well thought out. And I've got to say, it's just something you're thinking. You only see a show like this once on the blue moon, and this was the blue moon, and I was kind of glad we got to
And
experience it. So,
do you know what I also loved? I loved the release thing of 3 episodes a week because it was like watching a movie
yeah.
a week. And I thought that really worked well for this 1 week, 1 year. I do wonder, was there anyone watching who didn't watch them all in one night and sort of spread it over 3 nights? Because I couldn't do that. I just had to watch each one straight through.
No, I had to barge through all 3 of them. And you are right, it was like a movie every single time. So Chrissy has given us 4 yawns, which is the equivalent of 6 out of 10, which is actually quite good because I know Christy was never really a big fan of Andor to start with because it probably wasn't like traditional Star Wars by any stretch of the imagination. And in fact, until you get to the Gorman massacre, up to that point, you go, I don't know what show. This could be any show. But once you get to the Gorman, because you've got all the stormtroopers there and the Imperials there, now it's definitely Star Wars. Laser blast going off everywhere. Yeah, definitely didn't think this was some other sci-fi show. So very, very cool. Now, before we finish up, for those, especially those watching us on replay, hopefully somebody does watch us on replay, just got to promote your store, dude. So if you want your Star Wars collectibles, this is the place to go to, dude. Is that right?
We do. We have one entire wall full of Star Wars stuff and an upstairs facility that has like extra stuff on the weekend, and then we talk and chat about Star Wars all the time. Star Wars is one of our favorite subjects. So if you are looking for any Star Wars collectibles or even want to sell some, you can come in and have a talk to us.
Very, very good stuff. So, yeah, absolutely love it. So that actually wraps us up. Greg has said, really enjoyed Andor. Fantastic series. Yes, it has come a long way from its early iterations and has just kicked a lot of goals. And I think it's got a lot of fans scratching their heads going, shit, eh? I mean, this is actually way better than we thought. I think if there was going to be like a new Ahsoka season 2 coming out, it would be pushing shit uphill to sort of like match what we've just seen. But people like light and fluffy. I get that, right? And they like when I see their lightsabers and their and their saber duels and little kids running around, and it's skeleton crew quality. Each their own, but for mature audiences who like something serious and to show the Empire as a threat, like stormtroopers actually shooting straight. This has definitely been a fantastic series. So there you go. Anything you want to add before we sign off, Mr. Aaron?
Not really. Just it's nice that it didn't. It's nice that it landed the ending, because a lot of the Star Wars series, you get to the end and then you speculate woulda, coulda, shoulda. This one, I'm quite happy with how it ended. I thought it was really good. So I'd appreciate more series like this, although, as you've said, it's a very different series for Star Wars. But I think there's room in the Star Wars universe now, from everything for, the preschool CGI stuff right up into the more thoughtful and adult Star Wars stuff and all the way through. So I'm glad, love it or hate it, I'm glad Disney are giving everyone a range of stuff that we can pick and choose. You don't have to love everything, you don't have to hate everything, but there should be something for everyone at the moment.
Yeah, totally agree. And don't be surprised if some of those other supporting characters end up appearing in books and novels and comics, because people are going to be saying, I want to learn more about these dudes. Give us some stuff. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, thanks for joining us, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it all. We'll see you all next time on that Party Hard Rock On, and catch you later. Okay, take care.
Have a good night, guys.